We have a new panel. Financial trends and strategies for tourism will be the title of this session. Especially the sustainability of tourism business will be discussed in such a way to understand the instruments to be employed. The moderator is a specialist in sustainable projects, and she is the executive vice president of Turkey Investment and Development Investment Bank, Seçil Yıldız. Welcome, welcome. And Mr. Levent Çelebioğlu from Akbank Corporate Investment Banking, EVP, Etkin, Özen, Senior Financial Sector Specialist from the World Bank, Mehmet, Erdem, Yaşar, Deputy Head, Turkey EBRD, Ahmet, Yakar, the Project Finance Managing Director from ICBC, will be with us as the panelists. Have a great session. Thank you. They will turn the mics on. We turn the mics on, right? For Seçil? Can you sound check? Can you check? Hi? Yes.
Çok teşekkürler.
Thank you so much. So in this session, which is traditionally organized by Turkish Tourism Investors Association, we are here today to have our session. We have 4 valuable speakers in finance business. They're pioneers, they're leaders, they're specialists, they're experts. Very shortly, let me set up the context and let me move forward very cautiously. Let me tell you this. Tourism business, as you know, 2023 GDP of Turkey is $1.1 trillion, and tourism sector composes 5% of it, which is also explained in the morning sessions, and $56 billion is the 2023 income. So 5% is not a big level, but when you look at the current account deficit, 45 million used to be the last year's current account deficit, and tourism revenues were supposed to be 100 million. So tourism business is contributing to the current account deficit coverage quite highly. So of course we are going to speak about the vulnerability of the current account deficit and the importance of the businesses in covering up the current account deficit, and we'll talk about that. In addition to that, the GDP growth is expected to be 7%. Actually, this is way above the Turkish expectations, and tourism business is expected to contribute much more. 70 billion is the amount of the expected investments by the end of September, as Kaan mentioned in the morning session. Approximately $13 billion is the amount of the loans issued by the banks to the tourism businesses, and we're referring to $70 billion of investment to be made in tourism. So of course we have a huge appetite, and we will discuss what they will do, and of course we will have our conversation within the framework of the climate resilience. You might ask, what does it have to do with the climate resilience? Because you might say that they keep scattering the sustainability word or climate resilience word all over the place, but this is very important. So we've exceeded 1.5 degrees, and now we're increasing towards 2 degrees. So Sharm el Sheikh, number 1 was Mauritius. Those who go to Sharm el Sheikh, you can swim with colorful fish. Due to the global warming, these fish will go extinct in 10 to 15 years. Because the seawater heatens up, and the diversities go extinct, and there's this relation between tourism and climate resilience. Will Sharm el Sheikh make these generate these amounts as the revenue? No. Will Turkey be able to do that if there's a climate change? No. So the population is increasing. We need to increase the GDP. Looking at GDP and looking at current account deficit, tourism business is considerably, significantly contributing to GDP and current account deficit coverage. And this is why we have to be very careful about sustainable tourism investments. And this is what we have to do. As I mentioned, we have four valuable guests. We have Akbank corporations. We have Levent from the World Bank. We have Mr. Etkin from the EBRD, from corporate section. We have Mr. Erdem, and from ICBC investment banking business, we have Ahmet. We will be talking about how we will talk about all these issues. I will hopefully ask all of the questions to them without exceeding our time. Let me begin with you, Levent. So you are sponsor to this you're sponsor to this event. You're one of the biggest banks of Turkey. Actually, the other banks are also opening their tourism banking divisions, and this is very valuable for us. So in general, what is the policy of your bank in terms of tourism? What kind of tourism projects are you interested in or you are providing finance for? What are the criteria for you to make those finances? What is your share in the business line? So do you have any expectations, since we have all the shareholders, since we have public sector, we have private sector? So there's a saying, don't expect the state to do everything. But of course, what else is expected from the other stakeholders? Can you please elaborate on that?
Öncelikle turizm sektörü geçen
Now, first of all, last year we hosted 57 million and we're going towards 62 million guests, and that's going to bring $60 billion of foreign currency inflow, and the share in GDP has passed 5%. It's going towards 7%. So, of course, it is becoming a very important sector for the finance sector as well. And that's why we are attaching a great deal of importance to the tourism sector. And as you mentioned, the fact that we are sponsoring this event is also an indication of how much we attach importance to this. Now, of course, the tourism sector seems to be an ideal sector for the finance sector because it has very different qualities. Now, it is a sector we like as bankers because there is a revenue both in Turkish liras and in foreign currency. So there is a diversity, and we can provide financing in different currencies. And it also avoids the currency risk. But there is something that the tourism sector needs to be cautious about, and there were some great statistics shared in the previous panel. And also, our previous speakers, our deputy minister and other speakers also mentioned it. We are the 5th most visited country right now, but it is important to preserve this position. I mean, it's easy to reach the peak, but preserving that is another story. So the tourist satisfaction is very important here. We need to update our infrastructure. We need to introduce new technologies because the greatest advertisement you can have in the tourism sector is the satisfied traveler that goes away with good memories. And basically, in terms of investment, it is quite appealing for the finance sector. And let me share the good news with you. Now, of course, financing and the costs are very important for the tourism sector. And with the wind our country has been receiving in the recent times, I mean, we are expecting a decline in the interest rates, and it is going to be the beginning of a good time for tourism investments. But there are a couple of things that we need to be careful about. Now, the tourism sector is very vulnerable. It can be impacted by external factors. The pandemic, for example, was a good example of that, or a military aircraft that fell was another example. So finding the right financing model is very important too. And the tourism sector is going through some sort of transformation. And when we look at it, the summer tourism is more popular, and that's why the revenue is mostly generated from that part of tourism as well. So we need to have a tailored approach for the tourism sector. We need to have accurate payback terms, and of course, sustainability is also gaining importance, which we will probably talk about as well. Our Deputy Minister mentioned this. The Sustainable Tourism Certificate is also very important, and this will probably be one of the first questions we ask as we are providing financing. And in terms of figures, the loans we have offered have surpassed 40 billion Turkish liras for the tourism sector, so there's a rapid growth. Of course, it was a little slower in the past 1 to 2 years because of the costs, but right now we see huge demand, and we are allocating resources for this as well. And of course, being together with 3 foreign banks here is important: World Bank, EBRD, the support we're receiving from them, and also a Chinese bank even, and the biggest bank of China, actually. Yes, the world's biggest bank, actually. They are providing support for Turkish tourism, so this is all very important. And in terms of total project financing, 1/3 of our infrastructural projects go to the tourism sector, and that is very important. And in the second part, I'd like to focus more on sustainability. Great, thank you. So 20 years ago, even, I was financing tourism projects, and with 10-year loans, we financed hotels that would require a repayment of 15, 20 years, and then we would twirl it and turn it and finance it again. But basically, what you're saying is we need to have a repayment model that is suitable, that is tailor-made. So I think that was very good news. And so the World Bank Group is providing the greatest amount of support to Turkey. And together with IFC, I know that you are allocating a lot of funds. So sustainability, economic sustainability is very important for you as well, I know, and you have activities in the tourism area too. So as the World Bank, what is your policy in the tourism sector? How much financing did you offer? What type of projects are appealing to you? And what are the things that can be done for tourism projects to be more bankable? Is there anything you require from investors or authorities, or what type of projects should investors bring? So Umberto always tells me, don't overpromise, because we can't achieve all of that. So let me be careful. Thank you for the questions, and I'll divide it into 2 parts. Some of it I'll leave for the second round. Now, as the World Bank, in terms of sustainability and tourism, what's our perspective? Let me tell you that. For 2024 to 2028, we have a 5-year strategy that we announced this year. And in October, we had our annual meeting, and we outlined some priorities. For the past 5 years, we have been trying to implement this in Turkey anyway: a renewal of the energy infrastructure, sustainable energy, sustainable agriculture, increase in women's employment, increase in employment in general, creating more job opportunities, environmental sensitivity. These were the most important priorities for us, and our portfolio is being diversified across these. And tourism is at the intersection of all of them, really, because it has a potential for creating employment. I mean, it's the leader in the service sector in terms of employment generation. And when we look at it globally, 8% of all the global emissions come from tourism as well. I mean, maritime lines, aviation, tour trips, and highway emissions. There's a lot of emission creation, but there's also a huge potential to mitigate these emissions. So, of course, you know the situation in Turkey better than I do, but 80% of the bed capacity comes from 4 to 5-star hotels. And these are very competitive players, and they are also, unfortunately, contributing to carbon emissions. So, as a World Bank, we are prepared to provide support to players who would like to work in this area. Now, last year, we had about $4 billion of resources allocated, and this was mostly focusing on the green transition, energy, agriculture, and of course private sector financing as well. And some of the companies that utilize these funds were hotels and tourism investors, and we plan to continue with this in the upcoming period as well. But basically, we are a project financing institution, and as we are designing these projects, we don't only focus on our own forecasts and analyses, but we also take into consideration the requirements coming from the public sector. What we see in tourism is there's a lack of a holistic approach generally. I mean, a holistic strategy is very important. I keep repeating this in all of my speeches because we have a limited amount of resources that we can allocate. $70 billion of investment funding is required, and some comes from the World Bank, some comes from EBRD, and it's still not enough. So that's why the ministry needs to guide us in terms of where they have a competitive edge in terms of sustainability or a potential for that. Yes, thank you. Now, yes, we know that there is an important transition process together with ministries as well, and 8% emission globally is very important for the tourism sector. So a green transition for the sector is important, and you as intermediary banks will take a role in this as far as I understand. Now, as EBRD, I'd like to turn to Mehmet, Erdem, Yaşar. You have an important role, again, in development financing for SMEs and, again, for the green transition. So there are a lot of SMEs that are here with us today as well. What will be your role here? It will be the similar questions, really. What does tourism mean for you? Will you be active in the upcoming period? Because you are a development finance institution with a great appetite. Now, we should talk about EBRD and what Turkey means for EBRD. Now, as you mentioned, we provide high volumes of lending, and Turkey is the first country in terms of the amount of financing we provide, 20%. So we have 7.5 million euros of portfolio for Turkey, and it's about 2.5 per year. And there are some that we provide directly, but then we work together with our partner banks like Akbank, and we also provide some additional financing for the transformation of SMEs. Now, tourism is a sector we have an appetite for the future, and until now, we didn't directly provide financing for the tourism sector, but we work together with our partner banks. But in the upcoming period, we will have a new strategy that we announced for the 5-year term. We had a strategy document that announces what our goals are, what our priorities are, and that can be found on our website. And we would love to hear feedback from people about this as well. And in terms of Turkey for the future, I mean, starting of 2025, we see the tourism sector as a strategic priority. It's very important in the area of employment and sustainability. There's a lot that can be done in the tourism sector. And in this scope, maybe we can talk about what we see important in tourism investments. Now, sustainability is very important for EBRD. All the projects that we finance from now on needs to be in compliance with the Paris Agreement. And we need to ensure that we're financing an investment that supports the green transition. Another issue is inclusivity. Employment, training for the workforce. These are very important for us as well. And we have a technical consultancy service that we provide, funded by ourselves, and we try to focus on the capacity building of the company that we are working with and how we can develop the capability of the workforce they have. And how much financing did we provide? We have about 2 billion euros globally provided to the tourism sector. I mean, it starts from Montenegro all the way to North Africa to Central Asia. So it has a huge area in its scope. And of course, the repayment plan is very important. It needs to be designed very well, and that's the type of loans that we're working on. And of course, it is a sector that has a lower FX risk. That's why we find it appealing. Of course, the financing costs, I won't go into that right now, but the recent positive implications in Turkey, I believe, will have a positive impact on the financing costs as well. That's all for now. Okay, so after the carbon emission, we heard about your interest in green buildings, green tourism projects, and this creates hope for us as well, for the sector. And now I would like to turn to ICBC, the biggest bank of China, the project finance managing director, Mr. Ahmet Yakar. So we work together with him in many projects, and he is an expert in making projects bankable. So I would like to utilize your experience in that area as well. I know that as a Chinese bank, you have a great deal of interest in the tourism sector, but why are you interested? How much funding do you plan to allocate for the tourism sector? So I know that you don't only focus on sustainability projects, but you could also finance capacity building projects. You have payment models based on revenue. So what are your recommendations? What should we do all together? Thank you very much, Ms. Yıldız. Now, thank you very much. I see the time here as well. I promise to be time efficient. Now, we wanted to look at the tourism sector globally so we can actually deliver accurate information regarding Turkey as well. Now, when we look at the pre- and post-pandemic era, we see a 96% recovery after the pandemic. And the tourism sector is important because when we look at the global GDP, it has a 9.1% share at the global level. And in Turkey, I think the third quarter figures of 2024 indicate a revenue of $46.9 billion. So as ICBC, after we entered Turkey in 2015, we had a limited amount of support for the tourism sector, but to the complementary sectors around tourism, like highways, hospitals, transportation. We were part of all these projects. And when you look at tourism, there are two very important factors. One is that people feel safe in the country they're visiting, and two is that they return with pleasant experiences. So as ICBC, maybe we have not provided sufficient support for tourism until now, but in the future, we plan to increase our support, and that is why we are here today. Now, what type of financing projects do we invest in? Now, Levent stated it very well. Tailor-made projects are also very important for us, and we try to introduce a different notion. Now, as a banker, what do you look at? You look at the qualitative and quantitative features, you look at morality, and of course we look at all of that, but we also have a SWOT analysis, the Porter 5 strengths, and we expect this from the companies as well. And generally, the Turkish tourism sector is made up of family companies. And to take it one step further, we need to rationalize what we do, and we need to move towards best cases rather than management cases. Those are the things we look at in investments. I mean, how many hotels are there? How many of them are old? How many are new? What does the transportation look like? So we look at all of that, and we have a market technical analysis. So we try to mitigate the risk as much as possible so we can provide more affordable funds. Now, as a Chinese bank, of course, to be able to fund yuan-based loans, we will be having interviews with companies. So you will have yuan enter our world as well. Yes, we want to. So when we look at the financing costs, there is a liquidity in foreign currency, and the banks are trying to make the best use of that. And we are reaching the end of the year. Some targets have been achieved, some have not. So people are trying to make use of this. But yesterday, I was speaking to a couple of stakeholders from the sector, and I saw that currently the financing is being done in the right way. And when we look at the project indicators, I already tried to tell you what we are looking at. And to wrap up, basically, as we are supporting the national economy and improving employment, we are trying to find accurate financing models that are repayable, and also together with various incentives, maybe tax incentives, we can also find it more appealing. Okay, great. So first you talk about the importance of tourism areas, and then maybe PPP projects that can create 20% capacity building. It can be more bankable if there are such models in place, I guess. So thank you very much. Now, Levent, I'd like to turn to you again. On the climate side, you have a lot of important activities. Mr. Khan mentioned it in the morning as well. Now, of course, the sector is very vulnerable, and we need to go from 8% carbon emission to net zero. So what are you doing to mitigate this vulnerability, and what kind of sustainable financing options do you have for the sector? Now, very briefly, sustainability is one of the 4 pillars for us in the upcoming years as Akbank. So we attach a great deal of importance to this, and we want to support the green transition of all of our stakeholders. And what we can do is financial support and consultancy support. Now, when we come to the tourism sector, we are going towards a blue economy rather than a green economy. So when we talk about a blue economy, we're talking about the seas and the oceans and the preservation of marine life and to make efficient use of resources in this framework. So this blue economy is very big. It has reached $2.5 trillion across the world, as reported. So if it was an economy, it would be the 7th biggest economy of the world. That's the size of the blue economy right now. And we are trying to contribute to the climate risk management of our clients, and the Mediterranean basin is a very important location in terms of climate vulnerability. Now, in 2021, we had a problem in the Marmara Sea, a mucilage problem, and of those are very important in terms of our earthquake-prone location as well. So we need to have a climate-resistant investment, and the tourism sector needs to focus on that as well. The climate, unfortunately, is becoming more and more adverse. Dubai saw the biggest rainfall of 75 years. The airport was shut down for 3 years. I mean, it was a huge source of disgrace for that region. In Malaysia, they had 1 year's worth of rainfall in 8 minutes, and they had a huge amount of casualties. So our sector needs to attach importance to this issue, and we are willing to finance such projects. Maybe I can provide two good news with you. One is that we are prioritizing blue financing, and when I talk about blue financing, I'm not just talking about ecological preservation in the oceans, but I'm also talking about preservation of water resources, wastewater management, energy efficiency, water recovery. So we are the first bank that created a funding package for this in Turkey. And basically, for our clients that want to protect themselves against a climate vulnerability, we have a blue package. And secondly, we started to measure climate vulnerability. So now in all of our projects, we first have a measurement in place. And this year, for all of our projects, we had a climate vulnerability measurement, and we delivered what needs to be done based on the results to our clients, and we told our clients we are ready to finance them for this as well. And of course, World Bank, EBRD, World Bank through IFC, they have huge contributions in this area. For all shared project financing activities we have, we make sure it's sustainable. We don't have any projects that are not sustainable. Now, the game has really changed. When someone comes from the tourism sector, says, I want to have a hotel investment, or I want to renovate, or I want to buy a new hotel, we start off with the first questions. How much energy saving will your renovation create? Or this investment, how will it impact the climate vulnerability of the hotel? We don't provide funding before we receive answers to these questions. And this is something we owe the future generations. It's just a small amount of contribution, really, that we're doing. And basically, we were the first bank that announced its sustainable framework, and we use the IFC blue financing guidelines. We embedded it into this, and we are trying to follow the international literature, and we are trying to share what we learn with our stakeholders, and as a result, we are trying to provide funding as well. So basically, we see this as something we owe to the future generations. And Global Finance selected as the best sustainable financial institution in Turkey. So this is very important for us. And tourism is, of course, not just about a sustainable future, but it is also important to protect our cultural heritage, and we are putting efforts into all of these activities. Yes, thank you very much. You explained very well where tourism falls in the sustainable finance framework. So now, for you, tourism has become a top agenda item, I mean, for all banks. And Akbank is focusing on blue financing. I'm sure everyone is going to approach you after this panel. But what should we do, basically, to increase financing in the tourism sector? Now, we want a 20% capacity building, and we need some facilities that need renovation. So how can we find the amount of financing we require? What we require is 70. We are currently at 13. So, well, first of all, let me take it from where Levent left it off. Now, the disaster risk financing model is very important. We are working closely with the Turkish Catastrophe Insurance Pool, TCIP, as well. And we are looking into the insurance mechanisms. And also, I mentioned it earlier, the majority in the tourism sector is made of 4 to 5-star hotels, but there are smaller ones as well. And it is important that the big groups have their own ecosystem where they can provide farmers. And as the World Bank, we are prepared to support such models. One model, for example, is the blue and green bonds. Issuing such bonds through development banks is very important. In that way, we can support such models and the restructuring of hotels or the rehabilitation of certain areas. And most importantly, the credit pool needs to be expanded, and having some various structures that are supported by KGF as well is very important. And yes, thank you very much. The credit guarantee fund support is also very important. So tourism is going to be very important in the upcoming years. It's very important for development and for employment. And I will pick it up from where Levent left off as well. I want to talk about how sustainability can be added to financing. I mean, how to attach importance to avoiding air and sea pollution or mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. If we can focus on all of that, then there is a greater appetite for investment in these sectors as well. I mean, we worked on how we can provide financing to banks and to investors directly. So we are looking into all of these. All investors can reach us. The tourism sector is going to be a higher priority for us in the future, and we will be providing financing. The 2 billion euros that you provided to another region, we expect it to be diverted to Turkey as well. So, Mr. Ahmet, well, it is considered the smokeless industry across the people, the tourism industry. So we will be happy to be providing consultancy and financial services. Of course, the 17 SDGs of the UN are valid for our bank as well. And we will be taking steps toward providing the right funds in line with these goals as well. And Turkey is not just a summer country. I think we are starting to prove that. I mean, our season is becoming longer, and also there's health tourism, which was not part of the picture earlier. So that is also something that is boosting our appeal. And the Chinese tourist figures will hopefully be increasing through this as well. And as I end my words, what I'd like to say is, other than conventional financing tools, I think we are not seeing enough reflection in the capital markets. But basically, indirect contributors of the tourism sector, aviation and others, they are reflected in the capital markets. And they contribute, they comprise 78% of the 10%. And hopefully we will start to hear the public offerings of tourism companies more and more. And finally, what I'd like to say is tourism specialists should continue to invest, and we should continue to provide funds. Thank you very much. And as we wrap up, what I want to say is, Akbank talked about blue financing, and they have allocated a great amount of funds for that. And tourism is very important, it's critical, and we can see it from their sponsorship for this event as well. I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, you will find Akbank outside as well. And World Bank, of course, has a lot of projects for the mitigation of emissions, solar energy plans and others. And we heard what can be done and what can be done in terms of the credit guarantee fund mechanism as well, the risk-sharing mechanism. We emphasized all of that, and I really believe we need to work with the public authorities, with the ministry, including the Ministry of Tourism as well. And then from EBRD, EBRD has a great amount of financing available, and we are expecting that to arrive in our country as well. And I know that Mr. Erdem Yaşar is in close contact with SMEs, and they have a great appetite for our country. And Mr. Yakar promised Chinese tourists, and he promised yuan financing. And he said we need to have a more holistic approach to have a more bankable sector. And he said, I worked in the financing of billions of dollars worth projects, and in the upcoming years, as stakeholders, we need to embrace a holistic approach. And I would like to thank each and every